administration's efforts to counter anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination. President Biden's FY 2025 budget request once again includes an increase in the office's funding. We should grant that increase. Our nation's students deserve no less. By contrast, H.R. 6090 threatens freedom of speech, one of our most cherished values, while doing nothing to combat anti-Semitism. For these reasons, I urge the committee to oppose H.R. 6090, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Nadler. Thank both of you for your testimony. Mr. Nadler, can I just ask you, you made the point that this evolves over time, but then also the point has been made repeatedly that things have gotten markedly worse since October 7th. So something that evolves over time, but now is markedly worse. What are you hearing from your constituents? I mean, this involves your area. You're their representative.
Yes, it does.
What are you hearing from
I have
your
probably
constituents?
the largest Jewish.
Yeah, well, what are you
district in the
hearing
country.
from your constituents?
I'm hearing from my constituents that they want the government to do something about the anti-Semitism. They don't know exactly what, but they want to do the government to do
if
something.
I may, that's why we're here today.
And I know that we have two choices. The committee has two choices today. H.R. 6090 fiddles around with definitions. There's a lot of nice whereas clauses in it, and it enacts the IRA definition. It specifically also rejects two other definitions. All the definitions ought to be used, and since it evolves over time, maybe other definitions. The real thing we ought to be doing is increasing the funding for the enforcement mechanism against anti-Semitism, which is to say the Office of Civil Rights, which is in charge of enforcing Title VI, and we ought to be increasing that budget. And the president last year proposed increasing that budget. The Republicans proposed decreasing it by 25%. The compromise was it remained flat. The president has again proposed, I think, a 25% increase. And what we ought to do is pass a 25% increase in the budget for the OCR.
For me to be clear then, your constituents are calling you and saying if you will increase the funding for the Office of Civil Rights, these problems will be ameliorated.
No, my constituents are calling me and saying do something.
Do something. And
they don't know what to do.
I stress, that's why we're here. Mr. Fry, would you care to respond to that?
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. I think definitions are important. I think when you look at any number of bills that you do in the state legislature or in Congress, they are often terms that are defined, and the purpose is to create clarity within the law. I think that this is a unique opportunity to do this. This was an executive order originally under President Trump, which has been carried under with President Biden as well. But the importance of it is, and again, I don't think I don't think this alone solves the issue, but I do think that it's important to clarify it. And I've read the statements, I think, of others who oppose it. Certainly, the ranking member on Judiciary has his reasons for doing so. But I look at the number of states, 34, 35 states that have passed this. I look at the number of countries, over 40 since 2016. And I'm not seeing, and I haven't seen, the level of hysteria manifested in real time on some of the concerns that I'm seeing brought up by the ranking member. And so I think it's important. I think other countries have used this definition, and I think it does provide a modicum of clarity to the issue, is that Congress needs to say what its will is. Whatever that definition may be, it needs to define what this is, because it provides clarity to the agencies. The agencies aren't elected. They're the bureaucrats that carry out the intent of Congress and the executive branch. So providing this definition, as other states have done, as other countries have done, I think is a step in the right direction.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment on the IRA definition? Is a definition. It's a useful definition. There is a nexus definition. There is a Jerusalem definition. This bill says it codifies the IRA definition and says don't use the other two definitions. We ought to use all three of them, and none of them should be codified into law because things change. The chief author of the IRA definition, Kenneth Stern, said this. He said it shouldn't be codified. The IRA definition and the Jerusalem definition and the nexus definition give examples of things that could indicate anti-Semitism. but under certain circumstances, might not. Codifying one definition, codifying any definition is a bad idea. Codifying, as Mr. Stern, the author of the IRA definition himself said, which is this bill would codify the IRA definition, and its own author, that is the IRA definition's author, Mr. Stern, has said it shouldn't be codified. Not to mention the fact that it rejects, for reasons I don't understand, the other two definitions. All these definitions give examples of things that could indicate anti-Semitism. To
Right,
say,
just-
let's use this, but not those, makes no sense.
But just reclaiming my time, this strikes me as very similar to language we saw from Peter Roscom in the 115th Congress when he introduced a bill very similar to this, and you were a co-sponsor of that bill in the 115th Congress. So I acknowledge the difficulty here, but Mr. Fry, I really appreciate the fact that you've given us such a reasoned approach. This has not, I mean, obviously the problem didn't just start last October 7th, but it has reached a crisis proportion in this country, and I agree that we need to do something. Mr. McGovern, I'm happy to recognize you for your questions.